Today's episode of the Bill Simmons podcast is brought to you, as always, by ZipRecruiter. You know what's smart? Coming into work when you're sick. Oh, no, that's not smart. What are you doing, Nephew Kyle?
Reliable.
He's a gamer. He's sneezing all during this podcast. You know what else is smart? Go to ZipRecruiter.com/BS to hire the right people for your business. Their technology identifies people with the right skills for your job, actively invites them to apply. Right now, my listeners can try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/BS. ZipRecruiter is the smartest way to hire. Meanwhile, Bud Light. Did you know not all alcohol products are required to list their ingredients? That was news to me. Bud Light changing the game. They believe that we deserve to know our beer's ingredients, so they put an ingredients label right on their packaging. Bud Light brewed with hops, barley, water, rice, no corn syrup, no preservatives, no artificial flavors. Find out what ingredients are in your beer. Bud Light, enjoy responsibly. AB Bud Light Beer, St. Louis, Missouri. We are also brought to you by theringer.com, where we have one of my favorite weird things we've written. It was the dog Oscars. Did you see this, Kyle?
I saw it.
It was all about categories of dog. I mean, who doesn't love dogs? Now we're handing out Oscars for dogs on The Ringer. I was very proud of whoever thought of that idea. The Ringer Podcast Network running full steam. The Rewatchables. We did A Star is Born this week. And we have, you know what's coming next week? Dave.
I still haven't watched it.
You have to watch it. Man, Dave. I watched it last night. We're taping the podcast today. It is.
Is it streamable or you bought it?
It's streamable. It's on HBO.
All right, thanks.
Yeah. You can watch Dave and then you can watch the Rewatchables with us. Check out all of the Ringer podcasts, though, because we have something for everybody there on the Ringer Podcast Network. Coming up, Mallory and Jason from Binge Mode. We're going to talk Game of Thrones. But first, KOC, Kevin O'Connor. Right after this, Pearl Jam. All right, Mallory, Rubin, Jason Concepcion coming up a little bit later. We're going to try to figure out who is going to be the winner of Game of Thrones. We have odds and a lot of opinions. We're also going to talk about Joe Flacco and the Knicks as well. Kevin O'Connor here right now for The Ringer. Trade deadline was Thursday. 6 days. We've got to see some of the new guys on these teams, and I'll start, and then you can give your answer. Like, what's jumped out to me the most with the new guys on the new teams? Gasol looked really good on Toronto. And I feel like I underestimated that one in the moment because, you know, they've kind of been spiritless in Memphis in a lot of ways. And just like the energy that crowd was giving him. And then when you see like his basketball IQ with the other guys in that team who also have basketball IQ, it just like, I was watching, I was like, oh shit, I was sleeping on this one. That was the one that jumped out to me. What about you?
I think, you know, with Gasol, like he has a playmaking presence at center for them that they haven't had. Like Valanciunas is a good center. He learned how to shoot threes and space the floor effectively for them. But Gasol's still a better defender, even at age 34, a significantly better passer. And so with Kawhi, like his only real weakness or like the one knock on him is his playmaking.
Yeah.
And Gasol can help absorb some of that responsibility in addition to Lowry and the other guys they have now.
Dudes
Jeremy
were
Lin
cutting.
too.
He was finding them. I was like, oh shit.
It's going to be fascinating to see if he, you know, takes the starting role from Ibaka depending on certain matchups in the postseason, or if they just keep bringing him off the bench and he keeps, you know, bruising guys off the bench.
Well, so if he's, to me, it's like I need to get, if I'm going to win the title with this team, I need to get 4 rounds out of Gasol. I need him to be healthy and moving around well the whole time.
At one point this season, he looked done.
Right.
And then the past month or so, he's been pretty good, just like he was at the beginning of the year.
Right. He had a great start of the year.
Yep.
Just making threes, dipped to the point that I took him out of the trade value and then kind of rallied back a little bit. But
he's old anyway, even like with the production.
Well, my thing is, if he's playing 25 minutes a game and just giving them 25 really good minutes a game, that's probably better for him than playing 35 minutes a game.
I think,
you know?
Yeah, it's almost like it doesn't matter if he's starting or come off the bench. It's about how do you maximize his production. That's always the conversation with a lot of players. Can you get more out of him in 25 minutes or more out of him in 33 minutes? Gasol, maybe at his age, he's able to give more effort over 20 to 25 minutes and sometimes stretch it out to 30 when necessary.
And him coming off the bench is kind of ludicrous, but in a way that, you know, could that be like their Bill Walton in 1986 or... we've seen this over the years. These contenders that just have that bench guy who, when he comes in, completely changes where the game is going. And maybe he's that guy for them.
And the good thing for them is they gave up 2 solid bench players. DeLon Wright and CJ Miles are good players off their bench. Miles has struggled shooting this year.
Yeah.
But, DeLon Wright is a really good defensive player who had some playmaking, and replacing him with Jeremy Lin, I think alleviates some of what they lost and what they gave up for Gasol.
So are all the buyout guys done at this point?
Think we're just about there, right?
Unless DeAndre gets
like a Robin Lopez type, maybe that happens.
I feel like that's going to be Golden State if that happens.
We're just about done now.
Yeah. So I was looking at Toronto, and it's early, and we've seen this already with Philly for the second straight year. We saw it last year with Cleveland. They made those trades. They played well for 2 games. Everybody had the Kobe Altman victory tour, and then they cratered. Philly, we saw it they had 143 points against a Lakers team that is just an abomination defensively. Everybody's like, wow, this is going to be amazing. And then the Celtics beat them last night. I look at the Philly-Toronto matchup, and we can talk about Philly in a second. And to me, that seems like a classic basketball IQ versus talent matchup, where Philly probably has a little more talent, but the coaching part, the way those guys, I think, will eventually learn how to play off each other. I would just favor Toronto in that series. And the reason I bring that up is I think that's the 2-3 matchup in round 2, unless there's an upset. I don't like that matchup for Philly. What do you see?
Well, I mean, I think with Philadelphia, what you mentioned about Toronto learning how to play with each other still, right? I mean, with integrating Kawhi and Leonard and everything else, Philadelphia is having to make that adjustment mid-season. First with Butler in November, and obviously now with Harris.
And with bench guys.
Yeah, and with the bench guys as well.
Mike Scott was out there yesterday, and Simmons when playing the Celtics, and I don't know. They're just bringing in a lot of new people.
I mean, I like that trade. You and I disagreed on that when it first happened. I think that trade was worth it for Philadelphia because of everything Harris can do. He's a versatile offensive player. I mean, Shamet, his shooting off screens was so damn good for them, but Harris can do that too. He's just bigger and a better defensive player. So Landry Shamet was a defensive liability for that team at a position where they're going to need help.
But why did he need to be in that trade?
You got to give up something. That Miami pick.
They gave up solid. 2 picks.
Yeah, they gave up 2 picks, but Harris is a really good player.
How do you not get Beverly back in the trade then?
Look,
how's Beverly not in that trade? Why do you need Mike Scott and Jonathan Simmons? Like, I want Patrick Beverly.
Yeah, Beverly would have been nice to have, but Tobias Harris, we can't underrate him as an asset.
Who are they bidding against?
Harris is a player who can run pick and roll for you. He can screen for you and pick or roll, pop or roll. He can run off screens. He can handle dribble handoffs. And for Philadelphia, what they're getting is a versatile guy who can play along anybody, or he can be the guy when he's hot. For Philadelphia, the question moving forward for them, in my opinion, is will these guys all buy in to that just philosophy where sometimes on many nights, guys are going to have to take a back seat. We've seen Butler.
The answer I'm telling you now is no.
They might not.
You have 2 guys who are in line for a huge payday who they don't want to be the glue guys. Jimmy Butler doesn't want to take 9 shots in a game.
And that could end up what's happening, where Butler is unhappy and he leaves for a team where he does get shots. That could happen. But it's also possible these guys make a really deep run and that they do buy into each other with their long, versatile lineups that they can have with Embiid and Simmons and Harris and Butler, and then insert the 5th in there. Maybe it's Redick sometimes.
So you trust the coaching and the basketball IQ of those 5 guys at the end of games. And you saw it last night in that Celtics game. Mm-hmm. Please, Joel Embiid, keep shooting threes. Well, I'm so happy when you're 26 feet away from the basket, when you're 7'3", and you should be able to get Al Horford in foul trouble within 10 minutes.
Sure. With Embiid versus Horford, one of the difficulties in that matchup is Embiid's post game is heavily reliant on drawing fouls, which is okay. He's such a force down there. He draws a lot of fouls, but Horford is a guy who doesn't commit many fouls. Right. He's a very good fundamental defensive player. So for Embiid, if you look at like his synergy post stats, he's ranks 4th in efficiency, including fouls, but take those out, he's close to average. So when you're going against Al Horford, I think he suddenly becomes an average post player, which may be one of the reasons why he's pushed out to the 3-point line. Granted, he's not great out there either.
Look, it's early. I hate overreacting to anything. Hayward had one of his best 4 games of the year, and who knows if he can do that again in a 7-game series.
2 Minnesota games.
In this game. And maybe one other one. In a 7-game series, from what we've seen from Hayward, he just can't consistently play at that level yet. On the other hand, he looked different from the first minute of that game yesterday. There was an energy that he had that looked like Utah Hayward. And I think what's been shocking about him this year is he's just always kind of a step slow and just not assertive and aggressive. And, you know, the dumbest moment of the whole season was that Laker game when 30 seconds left, no timeouts left. You know, Kyrie's going to take it and probably score, right? You have like 80% chance Kyrie scores to put them up by 1. Smart's not on the court. Hayward is on the court. Horford stuffs Ingram. Ball's bouncing around. Hayward's a step slow to it. Ball goes to Rondo. Hayward's a step slow to him. And it's just like, that's why Marcus Smart's in the league. He's getting that loose ball 100 times out of 100. And at that point, I was like, man, this Hayward thing, this is just a season killer. And then he comes yesterday and it's like, whoa, there's Gordon Hayward. Where have you been? So what am I supposed to think about this?
It's kind of symbolic of the Celtics as a whole, really.
Yeah.
Every time it seems like the Celtics have fixed themselves, they just have one of their worst losses of the season. And then they follow that worst loss of the season with a really, really great win like they had against Philadelphia. Without
those
Kyrie
two LA losses were an atrocity.
Yeah,
the Lakers staying there up 6 with a minute left. They're giving up threes to a team that all they want to do is shoot threes. I don't know why they're on the line. That loss, the Rondo play, that was awful. And then the Clippers thing was even worse. And that was a key moment of the season for them because they were, I think, like 11-1 in their last 12 or something. And they had a schedule where you had that Philly game coming. You have a chance to really go on a run. And I thought what was fascinating last night, and I want to talk about Philly in a second, but just the kind of passion they had last night. The ball was moving. The defense was as good as it's been. The guys were really pulling for each other. You even saw at the end of the game, people are smiling, they're hugging, they're chest bumping. The bench is up the whole time. And I'm thinking, this is a team I really haven't seen this year play like this. And so what was missing? It was Kyrie. So what does that mean?
It may mean nothing. Ultimately, he was also...
Or it may mean something.
It may mean something.
It may mean like, Kyrie's not here, fuck that guy.
I think
let's try to win this game without him.
Kyrie, something he said either last month or in December, he's like, after game 70, that's when you need to be ready for the playoffs. And I think with this Boston team, that's true for a lot of things that they're trying to work out now, including Gordon Hayward, where with Hayward, yes, he's had these 2 really back-to-back impressive performances, especially that game against Philadelphia, where, like you said, he looked more like Utah Hayward in terms of his aggression, driving to the rim, and his intent on scoring.
Physical. Yeah, and he was driving and kicking out and doing stuff that he was great at Utah.
For sure. I mean, Hayward's playmaking has been really good all year. I think Boston giving him the keys, like off the bench, essentially being the primary playmaker over Smart and Rozier a lot of the time was a smart move. But ultimately with Hayward, you need the scoring from him. Like he's your upside player. If Boston has any chance of getting past these other 3 teams in the East, Hayward needs to be at least 80 to 85% of what he was in Utah. I think maybe 100% of what he was is a lot to ask for his first year back from injury.
Can he get to 90 would be.
If he can get there, then I think Boston absolutely has a shot to get to the finals.
I think it's interesting because so much time has passed now, but people forget how good he was in Utah. And there's been this whole thing. Well, he was overrated anyway.
So people didn't really know how great he was in Utah when he was in Utah.
Yeah, I think I voted for him for 3rd team All-NBA his last year there. But the thing I liked about his game the most was he just fits in with anything. He's just fun to play with. And I think, you know, he can handle the ball if you need to. He's a 40% 3-point shooter on paper, can get to the line. He's a really smart defensive player who's always in the right spots. He's just kind of a good guy to have out there. And what was interesting about him this year was just his confidence had gotten shot to the point that he really was a liability in a lot of these games. And I was talking to people I knew at the Celtics, and the recurring theme, it was like, why are they still playing him? Like, is this like a coach's kid type thing? Like he's like Brad's son on the Little League team.
Favorite student.
Yeah, he's like, he's pitching because he's the coach's son. And everybody was saying, now you don't understand. He's great in practice. He's killing it in practice. That's why he keeps playing these. It's some sort of mental block with the games because in practice, 2 out of every 4 times he'll be the best guy on the court. That's why they keep playing him. And I'm like, really? Because in the games, you wouldn't have ever known that he was even good. So Brad obviously is sticking with him. And I think you put in our Slack yesterday, you were saying like this was basically their trade deadline edition. Yeah. That was their mindset going in the trade deadline. It's like, Hayward's going to be better, that will be our trade deadline.
For sure. I had a conversation with someone yesterday that kind of prompted that thought, where it's like you look at the additions made, the other three teams in the East, Milwaukee added Mirotic, obviously Sixers added Harris, and then Philadelphia adding, who did I miss? Toronto adding Gasol. With Boston, they didn't do anything. But if Hayward does return to form, he's essentially their deadline acquisition. Like turning from a guy who's just like a glorified Evan Turner at the beginning of the season to, if you get Gordon Hayward for the rest of the season into the playoffs, that was your addition. We'll see if that happens. This could just be another flash in the pan for him like he's had over the full season. But I think the aggression is something that was missing even in those other performances. Well, that was there last night.
Yeah, I mean, if you can go look at, on YouTube, you can look at like Gordon Hayward, like his best plays in 2017 or something.
He was a beast. We talked about Harris's versatility earlier.
Yeah.
Hayward could do everything for that Utah team with his playmaking and his ability to drive to the rim, but pull up from anywhere as well.
Right.
And his versatility on defense too. Hayward was just a really good all around player.
There was a recklessness to how he played. And I mean that in a good way, where I should say fearlessness. That when you see the old YouTube clips, you're like, oh, wow, this guy was like, he's going into three people trying to dunk on them and
trying to dunk on people, running off screens for lobs like the play he got hurt on ultimately. I mean, he did that very often in Quinn Snyder's system for the Jazz.
I thought that Golden State game, after that game, I was like, wow, this is going to take another year to come back from this, because he was such a shell of himself in that game. And then you see the Philly game last night, and maybe that's a breakthrough. I think that's what this team needs, because as you pointed out, his ball handling is basically the second ball handler for that team. You'd think it's Smart and Rozier, but it's really not. It's Hayward's the guy who can basically do anything. I thought if they made a trade deadline, it was going to be like a addition by subtraction move, where basically just trade Rozier with a pick to move up in the draft.
Like flipping him for an asset that maybe you would eventually try to use for AD.
Right.
Yeah.
And also just to narrow the rotation.
Maybe they should have done that in October, November, December, maybe.
The Kyrie stuff, I think it's really hurt this team, some of the stuff he said. And I talked about in this podcast just about the concept of leadership. And I just feel like he's done a bad job. Like if you're like, I'm the guy, he's done a bad job at being the guy. And I think guys got worn out. Not just his dissertations on these guys don't understand what it takes and all that stuff, which were just like ridiculous. But, this is somebody that the season ticket holder thing that my dad went to when Kyrie's like, I'm going to be here. The day before they had some dinner or something when he told everybody in the team that he was going to be staying with the Celtics. And now you fast forward 3 months and it's like, I don't know what's going to happen. It's not a great way to like have a basketball team when you have that much uncertainty with your lead guy. It really does affect guys.
He shouldn't have said that.
Shouldn't have said anything.
Ticket holder thing or whatever. I think you need to take that basic media approach. Like, I'm going to decide during the summer. I'm just focusing on basketball.
Say that in October.
That's what you have to do if you're KD or Kyrie or any of these guys. I think with Kyrie's leadership, that was the question when the trade was made. It was a no-brainer trade to do that for Boston. It was about, well, what's Kyrie's leadership? What will that be like? I remember, I think at the time he talked about trying to learn how to become a leader. And that's something he's probably still trying to figure out. And he hasn't done a great job of it, of course. I think by
the way, nobody learns how to be a leader, just for the record. You're their leader. You're not.
I think maybe there's a lane that you grow into, perhaps.
But you still have to have it in you.
He might have a short track as a leader.
Like Al Horford's a leader.
A leader by example.
Yeah, but just like, good guy. He's there. He's all about team at all times. And when you're playing with a guy like that day in and day out, you just want to be a good teammate. To me, that's leadership. He doesn't have to do press conferences to talk about, hey guys, I'm the leader. But he's a lead by example guy who's a leader.
That stuff a couple of weeks ago wasn't a good move, of course. I think if you,
but it wasn't the only time. He did it like 4 times during the year.
It wasn't. It's funny if you look at like the transcript of that whole quote. Should have just cut that down to like 1 or 2 sentences and it would have been fine. But he went on for like 2-3 minutes, just rambling and rambling. It's like, just say less as a leader, especially in front of the media.
I think Kyrie is spectacular to watch. as an individual player, much like Harden is and some of these other guys. Like, he's
outstanding.
really amazing. He's watching that guy day in, day out is amazing.
He's one of the funnest players in the league to watch for many years now.
I'm not sure how he fits into a team framework where you have all of these talented dudes. And the thing that jumped out at me last night with Philly was how the ball was moving and how everybody was involved. And even like the fact that they had 112 points, but Smart and Rozier were 5 for 22. They didn't really play that. Other than Hayward, they didn't really play lights out. It wasn't like an amazing offense performance, but the ball was moving. They were getting good shots. Everybody was playing hard. And I'd love to know if the reason was because Kyrie wasn't in there. If Kyrie's out there, do guys naturally just kind of fade back because he's such a good offensive player? It's almost like you're like, oh, Kyrie's got this, and you're not as aggressive.
I think, but with Kyrie though, it's not like the ball doesn't move compared to other offenses.
No, that's true.
You know, it still moves. And
last 5 minutes, not as much though.
Of course, but sometimes you need that at the end of the game.
True.
You need that superstar talent that can get you buckets at the end of a game. Like when you're in the playoffs, regular offenses just break down. They collapse when there's game plan in game 7
and against Cleveland.
It's like we talked about last time. I think you mentioned how you wanted Kyrie to get more shots, but
right.
I think that comes in the playoffs. Right now, it's about just staying level and trying to maintain that ball movement offense. And then in the playoffs, that's when you may need him to take on a greater role.
But my question, and I don't even really think this is Kyrie's fault. I think he's such a spectacular offensive player. It's almost like it's just an outcome of, it's a reality. You just kind of, when you're playing with somebody like that, you just kind of assume they're going to take care of stuff. And when he's not out there, it becomes a situation like the playoffs last year, or like what we saw last night, where everybody's going, I got to step up. How are we going to get to 112 points? I got to really start attacking the rim now. And that's the part. How does this team play like they did last night and move the ball like they did last night and play with the passion they played last night when Kyrie's also out there? If they can unlock that, this is the best team in the East. And I have no idea if they can.
It may have to be like April 13th or later. Like that's when the playoffs begin. Like that's what it might have to be for this team, just to all play with that level of effort with Kyrie. Like last night with Kyrie, their backs were against the wall against this new look Philly team. Of course, you would hope that they're going to fight the way that they did. But I get back to that Kyrie quote after game 70. I think that's when, if these issues persist, that's when, or Hayward is still not the same guy that he was. If there's still all these questions after game 70, I think that's when the conversation is about, well, Boston, maybe they're the fourth best team in the East. But if by that point things seem to be at a higher level, Hayward looks better, then they're one of the favorites, just like people expected them to be.
The Marcus Morris quote was alarming. Then he backtracked from it the next day. He was like, I didn't mean the whole year. I just meant recently. It's like, nah, that's not really.
That was the quote that had you put up that Instagram story of the SNL skit, correct?
Yeah. Of that dysfunctional family dinner.
It actually kind of works.
Yeah. Well, he's right, because I watch the games and you watch a lot of them too. Mm-hmm. And it's like, there was a joylessness with this team a lot of the time that really didn't make sense. I noticed it when I went back early in the season and I saw them lose to Orlando. And had really good seats, and I could watch the body language and all that. And I was with my dad, and at that point, I was so bullish on the season. It was probably like the 6th, 7th game, and both of us were like, "What's going on here? Why does this team seem so like unhappy? What's happening? Why isn't this team super happy? This is like we're the most talented team in the East." So they've never really been able to get over the hump, and I do think. I've talked to a lot of people about it, trying to get answers. And one of the best theories I've heard was that if you have any basketball team, you have like your talented guys, you have your younger guys, you have your glue guys. And the recurring theme I keep hearing is they're asking these young guys who haven't really accomplished anything significant as NBA players yet to be the glue guys. So you're asking Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, who are still trying to learn who they are as basketball players and trying to be like, hey, it would be cool if I scored 40 points in a game. And well, it'd be cool if I made 8 threes. Like, they don't know who they are yet. And you're just asking them to do all the dirty work and all the little things and defer to Kyrie. And like, fundamentally, that's screwed up. Well, what do you think of that theory?
Well, they did accomplish one thing last year that might have set the tone for this to happen. They went to the Eastern Conference Finals to Game 7, where they had a taste of being one of the guys leading a team to great heights, and then that's taken away. I think maybe that was what ended up changing the mindset, because I don't think it's all about the individual person and whether they're able to accept that role or not. I mean, like, this is an extreme example, but it's not like Kawhi Leonard was handed the keys in San Antonio. He played that glue guy role and grew into a superstar.
But you have the Duncan Popovich infrastructure. And
Jimmy Butler, Paul
Tony
George.
Parker, Manu.
Well, I mean, but like, there's other guys too on other teams. Paul George, Jimmy Butler were role players first. And then they grew into stars. I don't think that's necessarily...
That's what I thought would happen with Jalen.
And it might. I mean, it could.
Jalen's been better.
He's been better since, what was
5 weeks?
Early December, mid-December. He's been a lot better on both ends of the floor. I
want to talk about Philly. We're going to take a quick break. Hey, if you're listening to this podcast, you've already figured out smart ways to spend your time. Here's another one. The New York Times crossword app. A fun, clever way to stay sharp. Every day there's a new puzzle, a new opportunity to challenge yourself and play. And now with the mini crossword, you can squeeze in a game in just a couple of minutes. Each mini puzzle is stimulating, quick, more important, fun. Play by yourself, challenge your friends, post your best times to share the satisfaction that comes from solving. Whenever you have some downtime, discover wordplay every day. Time well spent. My dad has now been sucked in to this. He was always like a newspaper crossword guy, but now he's both. Now he's also an app guy. You can be like him. Download the New York Times crossword app. He's a 2-time champ just in the last 4 months. Not of the crossword app, of sports, because, you know, the Red Sox won a World Series, the Patriots won a World Series. Anyway, the New York Times crossword app, it is at nytimes.com/mini. We're talking about glue guys. And to me, this is the key for whatever happens with Philly, because you have these 5 guys. For them to really, truly succeed, like to have the basketball. Tobias Harris having the best year of his career in the Clippers. They're running all kinds of plays through him. He's getting a lot of shots. Now it's like there's only so many shots in a basketball game. Embiid's got to eat. Simmons likes to have the ball. Butler's probably happy in the 15 to 18 shot range. Harris is used to 18 shots from when he got the Clippers. JJ needs to come around the picks and get his threes off. I don't like the 5 guys together in a playoff series in crunch time when it really turns into nut crunch time, because I think it's going to be really hard for the 5 of them to get into a flow. So what am I missing?
I think it's the same question that it was after the Butler trade. How do those main three coexist? Embiid, Simmons, and Butler. I think that's still the main question, where I don't think Harris is necessarily...
You don't think Harris screws that up?
I don't. I think Harris is so much of what he did with the Clippers was coming off ball, coming off screens, coming off dribble handoffs. It wasn't like he was just isolating, running pick and roll after pick and roll. He did that, but he can also do other things like he has in the past as well. So I don't think Harris is necessarily the guy who could screw that up.
But is he overqualified for that role? Like in the Boston game yesterday, he ended up taking the biggest 3 of the game. It's like, should he be taking the biggest 3 of the game?
He very well might be overqualified for that 4th guy role.
Yeah,
he could be, but I don't think
also in a contract year.
I don't think it's a bad thing to have an overqualified player in that role.
I mean, I personally think that they know Butler's not coming back. We've heard a lot of...
There's been rumblings.
Inside rumblings about that's not the happiest situation. And that Harris was going to be... he'll eventually be the 3rd guy. And they're hoping they can figure this out for this year. For me, it's like, here's how you figure it out. Butler has to be like, I'm good with 9 to 10 shots a game. And I will guard the other team's best player. And I will do all the gritty work. And I'll do whatever it takes to win. I personally don't think he's wired that way. I think he feels like he's one of the best 13 guys in the league.
Well, if he feels
he's not going to be the glue guy.
If he feels that way, that's fine, as long as he's willing to accept his role. I still think what it comes down to is, how does Brett Brown evolve this offense? They rarely ever ran pick and roll until Butler had that complaint in December 30th. Since then, they've run a little bit more pick and roll with Butler, but really not the rest of the roster. I think if they're able to implement an effective pick and roll offense with Butler handling...
You really think Brett Brown can do this at this point of the season?
I mean, it's hard. That's what needs to happen over the All-Star break. I want to see if post-All-Star they come out running more pick and roll. I still think putting Ben Simmons in a screening role where he can short roll down the lane like Draymond Green and just pick apart a defense or score, or having Embiid pick and popping. I think the amount of versatility, if you're putting the ball in Harris's or Butler's hand in the pick and roll, just creates a lot of issues for defense. The issue is it comes down to, again, how will floor spacing be with Embiid, Butler, and Simmons? Simmons has only shot one real three in his career. Embiid is a 30% three-point shooter, and Butler is not a significant spot-up shooting threat. That's where I wonder, how do you find the best combinations? Like, what are the best matchups? I still think Butler running more pick and roll, Simmons using that Draymond, Blake playmaking role in the half court is how you can maybe best maximize these guys in the fourth quarter. Rest of the game, that's when you let Simmons really dominate.
Did you see that clip when LeBron was playing like 15 feet off him?
I mean, that's the way teams are going to play him in the playoffs, because unless he proves that he can be a Embiid level 3-point shooter, like 30%.
No, that's not happening.
It's not going to happen.
I think when Simmons posts
where
up,
do you know what I think he needs to do?
Simmons, right, he's a switch hands. I know that's your thing.
Yeah,
I am terrified when Simmons is posting up within like 6 feet of the basket. Even if it's 8 feet, it goes wrong because then he shoots that terrible turnaround.
The fade,
that shot's awful. But I like when
he's got to get to his
low.
right hand hook. That's a good shot for him.
Right hand hook, which, if you put him on the block where he can turn into the paint with the right hand hook, but then if I'm playing D, I can't really double him because they have so many shooters. I guess you could double him with Embiid's guy, but the other guys you can't double off of. And he can turn in and land that right hand hook basically against anybody shorter than Marcus Morris.
Well,
I feel like that's their best offense, but when I watch the Sixers, I'm always like, this I just would love to see this in somebody else's hands. I'm not a Brett Brown believer at all.
Well, I'm not necessarily a believer either. I think the fact they don't run enough pick and roll as is really surprising. With the personnel that they have, it is just perfect for a heavy pick and roll offense. I think it's just
especially
perfect.
now. ESPN had that piece over the weekend about how Harris's season took off because the Clippers were just all of a sudden running him on all these picks and how good he was shooting
either
the picks.
as the ball handler or the guy screening. I just think all these guys can do that. They can be used in either role. So you think about if teams switch, the matchups you can get, the difficulties it could cause for the defense if they're dropping on pick and rolls against certain guys or hedging on others. I just think the pick and roll for them could be devastating with that 5-man lineup.
Who would you run it with Harris?
With Harris as the pick and roll ball handler?
Yeah.
Could be Embiid, could be Simmons, or you could even do it with Butler if you're trying to get a mismatch for somebody.
Butler would be fun.
Yeah, I just think those guys can work together, but the offense needs to be tweaked. And to your point about the post up, it's not just scoring for Simmons either. It's the playmaking.
Yeah.
I mean, think about like the posts in today's league, the way the Warriors use Durant and Draymond Green. You want a bucket from KD because of who he is as a scorer, but a lot of the time he's just looking to pass first and then looking to score. And that's Kevin Durant. Simmons, with his passing and vision, that might be the most valuable tool for him in half court offenses where there's other 3-point shooters around him. It could work really well in Philadelphia if they make the right tweaks.
I wish he was on a different team. I'm not even saying that as a Celtics fan, just as a basketball fan. I wish he was on a team that used him the way like Milwaukee uses Giannis, where it's just like, we're going to play with a crazy pace. You're going to have the ball all the time. And every other person on this team has been picked to make you succeed. And maybe that'll happen 3 years down the line. But part of the problem for me is, I think like ultimately his destiny would be like how the Lakers used Magic in 87, 88, 89, where he was like, he's running the breaks, he's doing all that stuff. And then the half court kind of becomes, he's down in the low post, things are running through him and his passing. I want to see that version of Ben Simmons at some point in my life. He's only like 22, so I'm sure we have plenty of time.
There's been hints of it. I just want to see it at a greater volume.
It's tough to do with
him.
Embiid though.
Yeah.
I mean, the Lakers worked it out with Magic and Kareem, but it really took until Kareem was like 40 and kind of falling apart as an asset for Magic to kind of grab the car keys from him. Milwaukee, really quickly. I love the Mirotić trade.
How can you not, really? It's perfect for them.
I said this last week. I thought that's what I would have, if I'm Philly, I'd rather keep my assets and just get Mirotić, and I feel like I have enough. And I'm getting a lot of the same stuff from him. Harris is almost like, he brings so much to the table, but they didn't really need all the things he brings to the table this year. They might need it next year. Anyway, Milwaukee, best player in the conference. They're going to have home court. I think they're going to be really tough in Milwaukee. They were good in the playoffs last year in Milwaukee. They get good crowds. all kinds of 3-point shooters. The X factor for me is Bledsoe, who has been good this year. I still don't trust him.
Maybe their second best player.
I still don't trust him.
I mean, with Milwaukee,
because ultimately you're going to be in you're down 3-2 in a series in Toronto, and there's 4 minutes left, and the other team is just sagging on Giannis, making it impossible. And it's like at some point, that's when your point guard's trying to create stuff. I just don't trust them.
Maybe that's where you do what we just talked about with Simmons, where you're posting Giannis, which they've done at times this season with surrounding him with shooters. It's amazing watching this Milwaukee team versus the last couple of years, just how different they are. Yeah, the system with they just get so many layups and so many 3-pointers.
That's what we were talking about last year on this podcast. Yeah. It's like, oh my God, this is like the worst version of all of this talent they have. I mean,
like last year they could only have spacing with Giannis at the 5.
Yeah.
And now like that was unsustainable because with Giannis playing him at center against other big men, you just can't do it. There's not enough size in the front court. Your rebounding's horrible. But with Giannis now, you could put him like the 3 or 4 with Brook Lopez, Ilyasova, Mirotic, these big floor spaces that allow you to play with size and space for him. It's really, they made the right personnel moves to put this team in this position. And then Budenholzer, just the tweaks he's made to this system on both ends, but particularly on offense. It's remarkable the leap that they took from one year to the next.
It's really kind of frightening to me as a Celtics fan, because this might be the 1-4 matchup. They have multiple guys who just killed the Celtics. Mirotic is like a Celtic killer. Brook Lopez had huge games against the Celtics.
Even before he could shoot threes.
Yeah. On the Nets would just like single-handedly like wreck the Celtics. And then Giannis has always been a problem.
Giannis, yeah.
Middleton is somebody that by the end of that playoff series last year, it felt like he was like one of the 20 best players in the league.
He can heat up.
That scares me more than anything, that 1-4 matchup where you just have a bunch of, first of all, they'd have home court. You'd have to win a game 7 there. But then they'd have the best player in the series. I never liked that. And I feel like Giannis has another level to go to when we get to the playoffs, because his athleticism and intensity now, even in the regular season, is really unusual. It reminds me of LeBron last decade, and like LeBron's first MVP season, 2009 maybe, where just playing really hard. He's such a good athlete, and it's just you turn on League Pass, you're like, I know if I turn on this game, that guy's gonna be playing hard. That goes up a level in the playoffs. I don't know what he's capable of. Like, could he go 30, 15, and 7 in the playoffs?
With more minutes, more shots.
Yeah. Playing 40 minutes a game?
And his efficiency, too. I mean, he's, if not the best finisher around the rim, he's one of the best. He's in the top percentile around the rim.
He's one of the best around the rim guys we've had,
maybe ever.
Yeah,
because it's not just like he just dunks on guys with his right hand when he's when he has space, when he has a lane. He can dunk on dudes with either hand at any angle, anywhere on the court, no matter what move happened before it. Like he has touch as well around the rim.
Well, he's also he's
unbelievable.
His offensive rebounding late in games where there's a shot and it's bounced around the rim and he puts out one of his alien arms and like just like flicks it back toward him. And it's like, he's 7 feet away from the basket. How did he do that? He's the best player in the conference.
Greek Freak, really a perfect nickname when he entered the league, huh?
100%. Yeah. So for me, like if I'm a Bucks fan, first of all, the Bucks stats, have you seen some of the numbers with them?
Which ones are we talking about? There's so many
just
impressive
like the point
numbers.
Differential and you could make a case through 55 games or whatever that just stats only. I'm not talking about eye test and that stuff, that this is one of like the best 15 teams of all time. I know it's not, but
just statistically,
yeah,
looking
statistically,
at net rating, best ever net rating.
There's a lot of good numbers in their favor that resemble teams like the 08 Celtics. And I think they're actually going to get better. And then they have the best player in the league, or the best player in the conference, maybe the best player in the league. And to play Boston in round 1 or round 2 would be great for them. And then have Philly and Toronto beat the shit out of each other in that round 2. And then probably play Toronto. I think if I'm them, I don't want to play Toronto. That's not out of everyone.
They can match up against anybody though. They can take on different forms. They can play
be
smaller
my choice.
If they need to, or bigger.
That would be my choice for the team not to play if I'm them. Because you got the Kawhi, You have the Gasol thing potentially. You have Lowry just taking the Bledsoe matchup personally. There's little advantages for Toronto.
Toronto has depth as well.
Yeah.
Too. I think that Toronto-Milwaukee matchup, I think those are no stretch to say they're the two best teams in the East right now. I'm curious, by the end of the season, entering the playoffs, is there anything that can happen for Toronto, Boston, or Philadelphia that can change your mind about Milwaukee being the favorite in the East?
I would say, I think Philly is what they are at this point. They're going to look great. I think they're one of those teams that's going to look awesome when it's 140 to 122.
They have room to improve, though.
They have room to improve.
Post All-Star.
I still think they're going to be up and down.
They could.
They're going to have a couple games where you're like, oh man, what happened there? And the Jimmy Butler thing is the all-time wild card. Celts, I just don't trust them. And
because it's not just Hayward, it's also the Kyrie factor that you talked about earlier.
There's a malaise with this team that I just find it hard to believe it's just going to go away after the All-Star break.
And it does not exist with Milwaukee.
Does not exist with Milwaukee. So
Milwaukee feels like one of those Boston teams with Isaiah Thomas in terms of the spirit and camaraderie that they play
100%.
with.
Everybody's happy to be there, and they have a good coach, and their fans are fired up. The odds right now, Toronto is plus 225, Milwaukee's plus 240, Philly's plus 280, and Boston's 3-1. That's ridiculous. You shouldn't have four favorites that are all 3-1 or under. What's interesting to me is I wouldn't want to play the Nets in round one.
They're tough.
You could beat them, but it's just, that's a lot of work.
They're the ultimate example of the ringer curse.
Oh my God.
Since your tweet, they're one of the best teams in the league.
Yeah. Well, they were blowing all these games in the fourth quarter. But I mean, the big thing is Russell has turned into, I don't know what he is. I don't know what the ceiling is for him now.
Well, he looks more like the guy that he was at Ohio State.
Yeah.
I think when it comes to like doing the draft stuff, the draft guide that we have coming out next month, I think we're doing an early version. But with the draft guide, like scouting players, I always wonder, like, when's the point they're going to start resembling the guy that they were in college? We're there right now with Russell, where he has these spectacular nights playmaking, sometimes some not so special ones, but solid ones, and the scoring ability from the perimeter. That's all there. Like check. That has translated at this point. It's about improving the weaker areas of his game. He still is a weak defender. He still does not get to the rim often. He still does not draw many fouls. Those are areas that were areas of improvement.
The free throw attempts is the red flag for me.
I don't know if this still stands true, but I looked a couple weeks back, and of guys to attempt over 17 shots per game, he had the lowest free throw rate ever.
Yeah.
Of guys to attempt that volume of shots. So,
but I mean, the way
a lot of improvement to do in that area to become a guy who, like with Harden, he's not going to become James Harden, but Harden can get to the line, get to the rim at any time. Russell doesn't have that area of his game when the shot's not falling.
I think what's been special with him is his ability to create good shots from 25 feet.
For himself, and others.
And for others. Yeah. But like, he's got that down, and that seems to be an increasingly important thing. But, it's interesting. Like, I think he's a max guy. You think his age and what we've seen in like even the Toronto game the other night, he's just going toe to toe with Toronto at the end of those games, making big shots. He's done that the whole season with his age, and he could definitely be the focal point of an offense, I feel like. So you hear the Knicks, it's like KD and Kyrie or KD and Kemba. For me, it's like, why not KD and Russell? And how would those two work together? And would you rather bet on a kid who's 22 or 23
who hasn't had surgery on a kneecap?
Yeah, versus Kyrie, who's 20, who will be 27 next year.
Kyrie's still young though.
Yeah, but he's had a lot of miles on him already.
Mm-hmm.
And then Kemba, who is what he is. I think he is pretty much a fixed rate at this point. But would it be better to roll the dice with Russell and hope that 3 years from now he's 25% better than he is now? I think he's the most interesting free agent this summer.
I think to your point about him being a max player, I'm not sure everybody in the league would agree with that because of his weakness on defense. But
the thing is, he's going to get max money. It's happening.
He is. And it'll be curious.
Too many people have cap space.
It'll be interesting to see what the Nets do. You think they match. I mean, it seems like they don't have another choice with the way he plays. And plus with Russell, he can play with their other ball handlers, Karis LeVert, Dinwiddie when he's back, who they got for a team-friendly contract.
Right, that was a nice
within
contract.
His role.
KOC, my worst case scenario is Brooklyn beating the Celtics in round one. which would just be like, what a way for the decade to end after the greatest trade of the decade and we just pillaged their lottery picks, and then somehow they beat us at the end of it.
That's a fun scenario to think about.
I would probably have to put my dad in a nursing home at that point. It might just be it. He just might have to be fed and taken to the bathroom by a nurse, because that'll be all it takes.
Followed by Kyrie leaving. Because with Boston, they have a crossroads this summer where they're either going to retain an elite player in Kyrie Irving and trade for a Hall of Famer Anthony Davis, or that elite player is just going to leave and they're going to go back to having this young, nice, fun team, but that doesn't have a real shot at the finals.
Yeah. I'm on the fence with Kyrie. Half of me is just spiteful and wants to drive him to the airport.
So interesting.
The other half is like, let's make this work.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to try to make it work.
Listen, I'm a spiteful guy and I'm used to winning championships, KOC. We're on a run right now. Red Sox, Pats have high expectations. Yep. I don't like the whole leadership. That I just can't get over it. Just shut up and play basketball. Stop. You're not a leader. Just stop. Last thing, you think the Warriors?
Oh, never mind. Okay.
You think the Warriors can go 16-0? Playoffs?
I would bet against that. However, I posed that question in our Slack the other day. Like, what would the odds be if the Warriors were to go 16-0? Like, what kind of odds could you get right now? Because if they're good odds, that might be something to bet on. Because I think you look at the way Draymond played.
I think it's impossible.
It's improbable.
Here's why I think it's impossible. There's so many threes in these games now that you're just basically defying the odds that in 16 games, the other team's never going to go 22 for 34 from three or some crazy thing. That's why I think it's impossible. I certainly think they have the talent to do it, but I don't think with the amount of threes people take now, the variance is just too crazy.
Well, and that's what I mean. It's such a low possibility. What kind of odds could you get on it happening where they just get on this run where everybody's playing at their best? What are the odds you get? Yeah.
Next time we do this pod, I'll have an answer for this.
Because I think with Draymond,
I would say it's like 50-1, 75-1, something like that.
Pretty good odds. If you want to put a little money down, it's pretty good odds.
Every home playoff game they have, they'll be like minus 700, minus 600, minus 500. Yeah. So if you figure it out that way, what are you working on heading into the All-Star break?
Well, I'm working on some things that I'll try to work on at All-Star weekend. Just planning ahead on that. And we'll figure it out after that.
I intentionally didn't talk about Zion this podcast.
Yeah, Zion is special.
Best prospect in 7 years.
Since AD. Yep. Most exciting, most athletic, most talented. I'm all of the above.
Next time we do this, I will be ready to have is he the best prospect since LeBron conversation.
Over AD, over KD.
Has he vaulted over AD and Durant?
I don't know about over KD. Because KD's scoring from the perimeter that he had back then.
If you're just talking about warts, Zion is like wartless. KD at least had the whole, God, he's so skinny. Is he ever going to put on weight? It was at least something that people were.
Remember him playing 2 guard for the Celtics?
Yeah. It was like, is he ever going to be able to put on the weight? He's such a strange body. I personally was all in the whole time, but I have not seen any case against Zion now.
I think he
has this unassailable basketball resume. Everything about him is a 10.
Yeah, the only real knock is the jumper. But I think with his projected role in the NBA, it's not a significant.
I like his
weakness.
jumper.
It's like it's above average for his position and his role. Everything else is either like very good or great or elite. He's going to change one lucky franchise this year.
And you like Morant too, right?
Ja Morant's interesting. I don't know how much I love him yet, but I do like him. I think with his playmaking and his athleticism, you talk about Zion, the athlete that he is. Morant is that like in point guard form. He just pops. I think with Morant,
he's like Westbrook level athlete.
Sure,
for a point guard.
And I think with Morant, like the question about Zion's jumper applies to Morant as well, but it's a greater area where you would like to have a plus jumper for a guard, a perimeter player, and Morant. Whereas Zion, you can use him in literally any role. He can be your playmaker with the ball in his hands. He can be used as a screener. He can do anything in the half court for you. Defensively, he's versatile.
He can be Draymond on defense.
He plays with such effort and intensity, and that's the thing that's been the talent. Like I think entering the season, obviously there was 2 things everybody knew, even casual fans who didn't really see much besides highlights. That he's an amazing dunker and that he clearly plays with effort, right? Yeah. But I think seeing it on the defensive end of the floor at the level that we have.
And how hard he tries every play.
It's like even
I love that guy.
It's like even more than I think you would have expected. Never mind everything else that he does on offense.
No,
the
he's like,
playmaking, ball handling, it's special.
You read about any of these dudes and it's like, who really genuinely gives a shit at all times? Those are the guys that always become the best.
Zion
and this
seems
guy,
to be on that list.
He seems... The cool thing though is we have two guys in this draft that when they go to a team, that team immediately becomes fun. Whatever their ceiling is, like whatever team gets Moran, it's like, that's cool. He's on Orlando. That's fun. I'll watch Orlando now. And I think it's rare to have two guys in one draft.
Fultz backcourt, not a lot of shooting.
The process 2.0.
I really like that trade for Orlando.
Me too.
Worth the risk.
He would have been on my team.
It's a low risk with a high reward.
Them or Phoenix should have been like battling for him. KOC, a pleasure as always. We'll see you in the Ringer. We're here on the Ringer NBA show. Yes. Tuesdays with Chris Vernon and then Fridays with Sharks and Danny, who's like out of his mind with the Raptors. How did Danny become a Raptors fan, by the way?
He went to
that's
Toronto.
it. He just likes the food there and he enjoys.
Fell in love with the food. Felt like home.
God, he's Danny for hire. That's what you should call him, Danny for hire in that podcast. KOC, thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
All right, coming up, we're going to talk to Mallory, Rubin, and Jason Concepcion about Joe Flacco and the Knicks, and most important, Game of Thrones odds that have come out for who's going to sit on the throne at the end of season 8. Wanted to mention a couple Ringer podcast things, though. Some of the newer podcasts that we have. You probably know about The Big Picture. We've had that one running for a couple months now with Sean Fantasy. Oscar season, this is kind of the wheelhouse for The Big Picture. Some interviews with great filmmakers as well as Ringer staffers and a whole bunch of things. Top 5 Steven Soderbergh movies last week. Check that out. Check out Tea Time on Fridays on Channel 33 with it's a little celebrity gossip. It is my daughter's hands down favorite Ringer podcast now. So check that one out, especially if you have kids. Maybe throw that one at them. 13-year-old girls, it's their wheelhouse. Bachelor Party, heating up with Julia Littman as well. Fairway Rollin', Joe House's golf podcast. Just put up another one this week. And then Winging It, Vince Carter, Kent Bazemore, Annie Finberg, which was our new basketball podcast edition. And then the Recapables, True Detective, wrapping up pretty soon. So if you want to catch up on that, check all of that out on the Ringer Podcast Network. All right, let's bring in Mallory and Jason. What a special day here. The Binge Mode crew is here.
Woo, yeah.
Jason Concepcion, Mallory, Rubin. Not that she didn't already have a hop in her step, because we're going to talk Game of Thrones odds for season 8. Asked you to come on this pod yesterday. Had no idea it was going to be Joe Flacco day.
You had no idea.
Had no idea.
When you said farewell to me yesterday, that today when I saw you, it would be one of the best days of my life.
I walked into the cafeteria, saw Mallory Rubin from across the way, standing under the television that was playing ESPN and the news of Flacco's trade, and there was a glow coming off her. She was pumping her fist, extremely excited.
Overjoyed, folks.
I've been waiting for it for years. I've never seen anybody bring a Super Bowl and more joy to a human being who then turned on them completely and totally like they were a terrorist.
Drastic mischaracterization of
Not
all the
really.
facts of
Not really.
both
He won
my
you a
life
Super Bowl.
and Joe Flacco's life. He was on a Super Bowl winning team. That's true.
He's the greatest 4-game run in the history of the playoffs.
Bill, you know where one of those games was? It was in Denver. And guess what?
Oh.
I'm glad that those Denver fans got to see that pass to Jacoby Jones.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that they now get to watch Joe Flacco every Sunday instead of me. However, I feel compelled to note the irony. I am married to a Denver Broncos fan.
Oh, so he's still in your life.
Which means that
still
Joe
hanging
Flacco
around.
is still in my life.
He's still hanging around.
Still on my television. And
Or
yet,
this is just 2019, just you're cleaning out all the men who've been in your life this decade. Maybe he's next. Jon Snow is next. All the men who have meant anything to you by 2019 might be a clean slate. Jason,
Jorah
me,
Mormont.
we might all be out.
I refuse to ever say goodbye to Jorah or Jon Snow.
Aha.
But Adam, I hope you're listening.
The Keenum Flacco QB platoon. Wow.
Keenum's got
What
to
a
be on the
battle.
way out.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a whole conversation to have about whether John Elway knows what he's doing. This is a very puzzling move, but
So I was saying earlier, there's certain people that they win a title and it becomes hard to really criticize them in every sport.
Right.
And it's almost like they become, there's like a caveat but I still think he's one of those people that he's terrible, but he happened to win a title.
He did.
It's one of those.
Baltimore fans, was there ever a moment where there was like a honeymoon after the Super Bowl? Where you're
Flacco?
like, you know what, Flacco sucks, but
Okay. 2 answers to the question. Sure, yes. However, you also have to keep in mind that Trent Dilfer won a Super Bowl with the Ravens
Yeah.
and then wasn't on the team the next year.
Right.
Proud tradition in Baltimore of saying farewell to the quarterback who happened to win a Super Bowl. So I don't think there was any, well, oh my God, this is inconceivable. How could you
Right.
even conceive of it? However, I think most people, yours truly included, appreciated what Joe Flacco did for the team for a very long time. And then as rational human beings who happen to know how to not only parse the data and the numbers of a contract, but also watch football games with our eyeballs,
Yeah.
could say that the money hit on his most recent contract and the way that he was playing was a separate thing to consider totally independent of the Super Bowl. Those are different
It was a
things.
catastrophic contract.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, after Lamar Jackson's amazing playoff game, it was the writing was on the wall for Joe, and Lamar went 5 for 28 with 9 interceptions.
Bill, I don't remember the uproar of put in the backup quarterback for Jared Goff at halftime tweets and slacks. Where was all that?
Who was the Rams' backup quarterback?
Who
Because I think he would
even
have
is
done
it?
better.
I don't even know who that person is.
Give Lamar time. Lamar is going to be a special player. I believe. I'm all in. And
I believe too.
Yeah.
The thing is,
I'm in. He just sucked in that playoff game. It's fine.
he was wonderful in the final few minutes when they actually let him throw the football and try to make plays.
In garbage time. Did you watch it?
Almost won the game. Almost came back and won the game.
Did
A
you
game in
watch
which
the
they
Super
made
Bowl?
no adjustments
Did
after
you
playing the
see-
Chargers a couple weeks prior.
Did you see our Lord and football savior Tom Brady win his 6th Super Bowl?
Here we go.
Oh my God. Amazing how we're right back here.
Here we
already.
go.
3-3, 10 minutes left. You know what's going to happen now. It's Brady time.
We did know it was going to happen, all of us. And that's why we're all so
It's
unhappy
Brady
all the
I
time.
know.
At some point, everyone here will learn to appreciate excellence
At some point.
and consistency and just superiority.
This is horrendous. This
I-
is very
man,
Cersei-esque vibe from Bill here.
Oh, wait,
Man,
before we get to Thrones,
Between
so
this and KOC and Slack, it's just very, very tough.
we're going to talk about Thrones, but I wanted to mention Jason Concepcion. For the first time I've known him, the Knicks are actually doing the right thing.
Yeah.
17 straight losses. Who's your
Franchise record, baby. Let's go.
Who's your tanking LVP right now? Who's the most important person in this tanking process for you?
Most important person in the tank.
Who's the guy you're relying on when
Man.
it's a 1-point game with a minute left and you're like, don't worry, we got this guy. He's going to screw this up for us.
Ooh.
You know, it's kind of, this is uncharitable. That would at this point be Dennis Smith Jr. That's uncharitable because I'm really liking the potential that he has, and he's displaying some really athletic moves and some skills that I think he can build on. But in a vacuum with this team, it's like having that guy go like, I'm going to take this over is
I got this. Yeah.
is kind of the best case scenario for a tank, considering the pieces around him. Also, DeAndre Jordan, who, very gregarious guy.
Yeah.
Um,
Great teammate.
His teammates love him.
Doesn't mind losing.
Doesn't mind losing. This is really an upbeat.
Just wants to make sure the
personality.
checks are cashing.
Just make sure those things are cashing. Doesn't really move, especially on the defensive end.
He's a 42-year-old man, but he's actually 30.
The most excitement I saw from him all season for the Mavs and for the Knicks is him celebrating Mario Hezonja's baseline dunk on Marquise Chris. That's a bust-on-bust crime, folks. Where he just jumped up off the bench, jumped up on a teammate's back, and ran across the floor when Hezonja was coming out and hugged him. I was like, man, look at that energy. Look at that crisp movement from DeAndre Jordan.
Wow.
Yeah, it's great. I'm glad that he's only displaying that on the sidelines, not on the floor, where it might affect the outcome of a game.
Has
Mallory-
Dennis Smith Jr. sent any tweets recently about slanging that wood?
Nothing
or
about the
is
wood.
he- no.
Slanging that wood.
Slanging that wood in his
Slanging that wood.
pants.
My second favorite basketball tweet of all time.
Yeah, it's
First
pretty
one,
great.
obviously, being Ray Allen thinking he was DMing
Yeah,
somebody,
right.
but actually tweeting
Oh,
things
man.
that he was going to do to her genitals.
Very tough.
Incredible. And then deleting it and then saying he got hacked. My
Yeah.
favorite moment of the decade.
Man,
Um, when we have the lottery, which I think is
Mhm.
mid-May.
Yeah.
What do we do from a content standpoint from the Ringer? Like, clearly we have to have all of our Knick fan employees in
Oh,
the same
yeah.
room.
it's the tense.
We need
the
to watch
tension
them
of-
There
crumble
needs
when
to
they
be a
realize
live-
they're not getting Zion.
Or if they
dare
get
you.
Zion,
How
it's
dare
like
you.
the end of like Rocky 3. Like, it would be incredible.
Yeah, just like da-da-da,
Would that be the happiest you've ever been about anything?
I won't. My body won't know what to do if that happens.
Because you've had the Knicks,
No
their
joy.
title was 73. You weren't alive
Yeah,
yet.
and then it's like, when have they haven't won? They haven't been in the playoffs in a while, and even then, it's like they've been into the second round of the playoffs once in like 20 years.
Yeah, that's
It's
a problem.
Like, so, we need this. We haven't had a number one pick since Ewing. So we need this.
So the greatest moments of your lifetime, basically, for the Knicks are
Yeah.
the LJ 4-point shot,
That was
Ewing, winning the lottery with Ewing,
yeah.
beating the Celtics in the Boston Garden Game 5,
Yeah,
Right?
when Ewing took the three that went in and stuff.
beating the Pacers in Game 7,
Yeah,
and probably a couple other ones, but not a lot the last 20 years.
not anything that's like real that was like that was foundational.
Isaiah
Jeremy
Thomas
Lin-
getting fired.
that was great.
Linsanity?
Linsanity is honestly the peak. Linsanity, I would say, is the best. That's the best I felt about the Knicks. That was like something I could hold on to that felt real. That was the best 3 weeks of my life.
Oh,
Also, maybe the greatest Asian American sports moment of all time.
Maybe. I mean,
It's certainly the one that's remembered the most fondly.
when he
I know it's like, I talked to Chang and Cho about it once.
Yeah.
We're having dinner, and Cho doesn't know anything about basketball. He's like, that was the
It
greatest
was the
thing that's
greatest.
ever happened.
There's two moments that was like, I could die right now. When he hit the game winner against Toronto, which is the true start of Linsanity. That's when
Yeah.
it started.
Yeah.
And then when he put Derek Fisher in the blender during that game against the Lakers at MSG where he scored 38. That I just could not even handle the energy that was coursing through my body.
I
at that
remember,
time.
I think we were at Grantland. We had
Yeah.
Jay Caspian Kang, I think at MSG for the Lakers game, or he was in one of them. I'm pretty sure it was the Lakers game. And it was like the Venn diagram for every single thing Kang cared about to write about. It was unbelievable. It was, we got like 3 weeks of content on Grantland, just every day, Lynn related. And then all of a sudden at that game when Miami killed him right before the All-Star break.
Yeah, they really exposed him. At
and
that
they were
point.
like, let's just take this guy out. He's
Yeah.
not a good enough athlete.
The energy in New York City was unbelievable.
God.
It's like nothing I've ever experienced. Where you're walking down the street and you look up like into apartment buildings and you can see TVs that are like on MSG, and you just can't wait to get home to watch the game because
That's
like
Jason's version of most New Yorkers walking on the High Line and watching people fuck in the standard hotel windows. It's Jason's version of that.
that's a real thing, actually. That's a real thing that
If
happens.
Carmelo came back for the last 10 games of this Knicks season, are you happy, sad, delighted? Does he help
Oh,
the tanking?
man.
What happens?
Oh man,
Farewell Carmelo tour?
bring him home.
Bring him home.
Bring him home. Ariana Lenarski, who is our tarot reader for NBA Desktop, actually did. She did pull some cards that seem to suggest that he might come either to the Nets or the Knicks. So that it's in play.
I love the tarot reader.
Incredible.
She's incredible.
Incredible.
I honestly
Our
feel
own
like
Sybil Trelawney?
She's an incredible person with, she can really just tap into the universe's mysteries.
Has she ever pulled a lightning struck tower card?
No, but let me tell you, and this is real.
Bill, that's a Harry
There's
Potter
a lot
reference.
of tension when you asked, when we asked about Enes Kanter, which is like actually like a life and death issue. Like
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, like if I see like a Grim Reaper card here, we may just have to cut this and not do it. Like when she pulled the 3 of Cups, when I asked like if the Knicks would get the top pick, I shit you not, my heart almost exploded.
what would happen? Could we do a thing where she reads Nephew Kyle?
Oh,
Oh yeah,
Oh,
no,
boy.
there's no question we could do a thing where she reads.
That would
Nephew
be
Kyle.
some of the best content we've produced all year. We're going to take a quick break, then we're going to talk about Thrones. The new Microsoft Surface Pro 6 can help you get things done whether you're on the field or running a business. Take Brian Arakpo and Michael Griffin, 2 former NFL teammates who have opened a cupcake shop With the Surface Pro, they can do everything they need, from setting schedules to creating promotions for social media and designing new flavors. Plus, it's light, super fast, has a great battery life. Brian and Michael are proving you can tackle all your passions with the power and speed of the new Surface Pro 6. Thrones.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know, but the show's wrapping up.
This is
We're
it.
aware.
This is it.
Well
We're
aware.
aware.
I'm actually worried about both of you.
Concerning times.
Yeah.
This is almost like this would be the equivalent for me if like this was the last NBA season ever.
Right. This is it.
This is like this. I never get to watch basketball games. Like what? What am I going to
Well,
do?
there's the spinoff.
The spinoff. And,
Too much pressure on the spinoff already.
well, I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
I think that's a
agree.
good thing.
Got to keep the
And
standards high.
Yes. And also, not to get too sentimental and existential immediately, but I think we would agree that one of the things that's so special about this story, and a lot of the stories that really unite a lot of people, is they never really end, right? This will be there forever. Sure, oh my God, this is the last, like one of the last remaining bits of monoculture, the last thing that you can't DVR, you have to watch on time or you won't be participating in
True.
the conversation in the moment. That will end. But this is a story that people are going to be talking about and sharing and forging communities around forever. And hopefully we will get another book at some point. George,
I think
George, how's wins coming?
I'm on record as saying I think he gets wins out. I think that happens.
And I think that will sustain the fandom.
Somebody send George some drugs. Send him some Adderall at least.
I worry about his ticker, honestly, at his age, if he starts with the Adderall at this point.
What's your fear factor with 1 being this is going to go great and 10 being the last season of Lost?
Oh.
On a scale of 1 to 10 for your fear factor for this season letting you down in some way.
I mean,
It's like
considering the
8.5?
topic we're about to talk about and some of the odds that we've seen from Vegas, I have a high level of concern.
High level of concern.
I'm
So
concerned.
you're like an 8.5?
I wouldn't put it that high. I would say like a solid 7.
10 is the entire
I'm gonna
Lost
love
cast.
it. I'm gonna enjoy it no matter what.
Yeah.
Let me just say that.
Yes.
But you
Is
know,
Kyle
like
sick? Am I in the same room as a sick person right now?
Oh yeah.
Oh God.
Kyle, you're sick?
Yeah.
Oh my God. This is a
Sorry, I came to work,
disaster.
guys. Jesus.
Wait, did you not get the slack?
No.
Kyle.
Oh my God.
Oh man.
You haven't don't come in when you're sick, Roll.
Sorry, continue.
Jesus.
so
Sorry, I'm sorry.
I'm gonna love it. Like there's virtually nothing
Fucking
that
nephew.
there's nothing that the
Can't
show
take 'em
could do that
anywhere.
would make me hate it. But you know, like there's certain choices that there's certain things you'd love to see and certain things that you wouldn't like to see. So yeah, I'm concerned about them fumbling it to an extent.
Nothing will be worse than the Lost cast finding out that they were in purgatory the whole time.
So, okay, this might shock you to hear. I'm slightly afraid to even say this out loud.
You liked it.
I still kind of ride for the end of Lost. Like, because, and so that will lead into my next statement, which is, even if it's disappointing, it's still going to be special.
Right. Agreed.
And I think when I am this invested in something, and I think when a lot of people are this invested in something, it cuts both ways. On the one hand, people have obsessed over every single aspect of the story, obsessed over it. Every theory that you could possibly think of is out there, which means that every possible outcome is something that people have considered. And so there's the aspect of whether it will just be an ending that satisfies people or disappoints people, what that even means at this point in the story when subverting expectations was part of what made Game of Thrones special.
Yeah.
Do we want to subvert expectations at the end, or do we want a happy ending? What do people even want? And that varies person to person. And so whether the particular end game, and whatever an end game even is in a story with this many characters and this many plot lines, is satisfying to each of us personally, I still think that this experience has been so special, and it's one of the defining stories of our time. How bad can it really be?
How
That
bad
said,
can
of
it
course, there are
really
things
be?
to be concerned about.
Right.
I think those are fair points.
There's such a strong foundation that has been built to this point.
Yeah, this is a Titanic
this show's
achievement
basically
in
the
pop
Warriors.
culture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like, all right, they still have the most talent in the league. What could really go wrong?
What could
here?
really we've been doing our rewatch, and it's amazing how the seasons they hold up. Season 1 is incredible. I'm at the end of season 2 now. It's incredible. It's just great stuff.
The one thing that's really changed, and all indications seem to be that this is 6 episodes, but each one is basically a movie.
Right.
So they're doing about 10 hours of content over 6 episodes.
Mhm.
Why not just do 10 episodes
I
that are 1 hour? Of
I don't know.
content?
I mean, last season was only 7 episodes, so that trend
And some of them
began.
are longer.
Yeah.
already. But
Well, you see Weiss at the basketball game, can't you? Like
Baseball, yeah.
Yeah, can't you ask him?
Our season starts in 2 weeks. Yeah, I'll wait till he's groggy at 7:45 in the morning to find out.
What about
my
10?
guess would be it's, they probably only want to do so many episodes, but then as they were doing them, probably wanted to load stuff in and kind of got out of hand. Just was weird though. It's weird to go from 1 hour shows to now movies for the last season.
yeah, I think part of it is probably about what is going to be in each of these episodes.
Right.
We can expect a lot of battles. We have two great wars, right? The war between the living and the dead, and then the war between the humans, the various houses. Cersei against presumably John and Danny and whatever those respective contingents look like. They're going to want to build not only, I assume, the halves of the season,
Right.
but each episode around some sort of massive set piece. And so to go with a more cinematic approach, I think makes sense. Also, on the one hand, there are an unbelievable amount of unanswered questions, which is exciting. There's a lot of stuff that we still have to find out, but also think of how many characters have been killed off, right? Think of how the cast and the world, the globe of Game of Thrones has shrunk. We're ultimately dealing with a pretty contained set of people and plot points at this point. And so to put all those people in a couple places and say, we've got 6 weeks where we're figuring it all out. Of course, I wish there were more. I want it to go on forever, but I understand the logic behind it. Also, they want to make Star Wars, right?
Will you cry at the end?
Oh, I'm going to be a fucking
You're going to be on
wreck.
TV. You're going to be on our Twitter show.
Yeah, I know.
That's like a sociological experiment. Putting you on immediately after the last show.
I'm going to be...
Might even be medicated.
I'm going to be an emotional wreck. I mean...
It's going to be a mess.
Not even the end. I think every step along the way. If Ghost, my favorite direwolf, dies, I will not be capable of forming a coherent thought. I don't know what I'm going to do.
I think after announcing the death of Sir Pounce, which was completely unnecessary
Very
and honestly
tough.
like very, very aggressive, I think I hope that Ghost stays with us.
When is the last episode?
Well, the first episode is April 14th, Sunday, April 14th. So 6 weeks after that.
So that's like
Memorial Day, right?
14th,
No.
21st, 28th. No, that's like right around the lottery. That could be like the most exciting week of your life.
I will need to just be on like a lot of horse tranquilizer during that time.
We have
May 19th.
Yeah.
Isn't the lottery like right around there?
Yeah, it's right.
It's like 2 days later. Oh my
I don't
God.
know what I'm going to do with myself.
They're like paramedics
I
here.
know.
All right, so we have odds for who will rule Westeros at end of season 8, sit on the Iron Throne. These odds are from a site I found, Sportsbook. Bran Stark plus 150, our favorite. Bet
concerning.
$100, you win 150.
Yeah. So this one we were texting quite a bit about this last night in the Slack, talking to our other fans of the shows. And this choice is so out of left field that it feels like
Do they know something?
something?
Yeah. It's that concerning.
So that's the only conclusion you can come to.
So for the audience out there, this is the Stark kid who can't move his legs.
And is also not
the three-eyed raven,
and has also pretty clearly given up his Stark identity. He considers himself he is the three-eyed raven. So he's essentially this kind of like magical steward of Westeros, of the connection between the natural world and the human world. It would be kind of a step down for him to be like, now I will govern the continent.
in season 7, when Bran and Sansa are reunited, and she says, "You're the Lord of Winterfell," and he flat out says, "Not interested.
Yeah, I don't want the job.
That's not my life anymore." And
Right.
then the really heart-wrenching scene where he says, where he doesn't really say goodbye to Mira. She says goodbye to him, and he's just like, "I'm not Bran Stark anymore. That is a relic of another life. I am the Three-Eyed Raven.
That's right.
This is my life now. This is my responsibility. I see across time." So I think in terms of just the evolution of the plot and Bran's character, that's partially why people had moved beyond considering him as an actual who will rule at the end.
A little too
candidate.
spacey to be on for the day-to-day in King's
So these
Landing.
odds were immediately suspicious to you, and
Yes.
you feel like there's some inside info potential
Well,
here.
Why would you make that choice?
there are two possibilities,
Right.
I think. One is the most alarming, which is that
They know something.
they know something. Vegas knows something. I almost
Well, think about like how many people would have to know what happened in the last episode. So if you have a crew,
Right.
even if you film like whatever the last scene is or whatever, I would think it would be at least 100 people would know.
Probably more.
probably more.
Probably
and I mean,
more.
we should say, just for full transparency and clarity, we have no idea.
We have no
first of all, we have not seen any leaks. And when there are leaks, like there were rampant leaks in season 7, we try really hard to avoid them because that's not how either of us want to experience the story
100%.
and find out what happens. Have not seen the same internet leak spoiler surge
been
heading into
relatively
season
tight.
8, which is encouraging. So on the one hand, there hasn't been that kind of buzz. Maybe
Do you think
not,
they would do
but-
like film the 3 different endings to throw people off the scent move?
Well,
I don't think they have time to do that.
There were a lot of rumors when they were filming the season that they were going to feed dialogue directly into the actors'
Right.
earpieces, so there weren't even scripts. They were going to have multiple scenes that they acted
Yeah.
out, different endings for different episodes, so that they could throw people off the scent. It was I don't know how much of that was bullshit.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it was probably just an effort to say, oh, we're going to make sure that no information can be considered real. But I don't know. This is just such a strange
We should also say that
odds-on favorite.
we should also say that there's an interview with, why can't I remember the actress who plays Sansa Stark's name? All of a
Sophie
sudden.
Turner,
Sophie,
one of my
there's an
tattoo idols.
Right. There's an interview with Sophie Turner where she's like, "Oh, I told my friends the ending." So like it's out there.
Sure.
There's like it's like on the streets.
So you get Sophie Turner and put a couple drinks in her
Okay,
at the
but
Soho House, and she's telling
I
5
have-
people.
I have a question. You're a gambling expert. So
Yeah.
this isn't a sporting event where the outcome is not known and
Right.
it is based
It's
on
known.
parsing information. Like the outcome of Game of Thrones is known to people, as you're saying. But if something has leaked and is at a certain point accessible to the masses, they would take it off the board.
Right. So nothing
it's
is leaked yet.
And that gives me hope.
So
Because they
I'll,
actually took Game of Thrones season 7
That's
odds
true.
down
That's true.
when the leaks started.
I'll
if
rip
I
through the
recall.
odds and then we can go through just for the audience. Jon Snow is 2-1.
Okay.
The mother. Not this mother, the other mother. 3-1.
I think those are
Daenerys.
essentially correct.
Sansa Stark, my favorite pick.
Mm.
7-1.
I like it. She's
I
got a
just
quick
like the
eye.
odds. I like the
Yeah.
7-1. I get some value on that. The Night King is also 7-1.
That's-
This is so funny to see this.
That's the other thing we have to talk about with
Yeah, we
Bran.
have to talk
We
about
need
that.
to circle back to that in a minute with Bran.
Tyrion Lannister, 8-1.
Interesting. That's not gonna
Arya
happen, but
is
no way.
16-1. So is Cersei. And then it gets silly after that.
Gendry, Jamie, Sam.
Yeah, there's
Yeah,
16-1.
Davos.
Jamie's 16-1 with his one arm.
Gendry actually
Sam's
has a
25.
better path than you think. I'll just say that. But
Well,
that-
Gendry is King Robert's son.
Yeah.
All right, so Jon Snow is 2-1. I gotta say Arya at 16-1. Just from the arc of her,
Mhm.
that wouldn't shock me either as a value bet.
I-
But it seems like when I saw this, I just assumed Jon Snow was going to be the favorite,
Sure.
and I was surprised that he was not
So
the favorite.
can we circle back to the Bran thing for one more second?
Yeah.
Because I think ruling out any sort of leak or inside information,
Right.
trying to figure out what could be fueling Bran as the winner here, there's only one answer.
Okay.
And it's the Bran is the Night King
the Bran is the
theory,
Night King theory.
which is, I think at this point, the most prevalent and parsed remaining Game of Thrones
Can you do that theory in 20 seconds?
It's that Bran, who is a warg,
right.
at some point there are variations of it. There's a Bran was the Mad King theory. Bran is all of the Brandon
Right.
Starks theory. There are various theories about Bran traveling across time and into people's minds. But the Night King one specifically is that Bran will at some point, or did at some point, warg back across time and into the Night King's mind and then became him.
Right.
In essence. That's one of the versions of it.
So what happens if you bet? So you'd win both bets?
Well, that's the question.
That's the question.
That's
Is that
confusing.
the reason why Bran is so high?
But
you
the
know what I
Night
mean?
King is also listed at 7-1.
Well, it's also like, does that mean that Bran will be an ally for good?
Right.
Who is able to, because will Bran warg a dragon has also been one of the main Game of Thrones theories for years. And when, obviously spoiler alerts for anybody listening at
Come
this
on.
point. But when Viserion, Dany's third dragon, was killed by the Night King, and
Tragic
then
day.
the Night King, it was a tragic
It
day.
was a truly tough day.
Never been more upset about a dead dragon in my
It's
life.
very upsetting. The Night King raised Viserion. He is his steed now. And it's like, okay, well, that doesn't mean that the Bran working a dragon theory is dead, because could Bran work Viserion as an undead dragon? That's still in play. So there are all these different super fantastical, mythologically driven theories involving Bran. Maybe he takes over the Night King and eliminates the Night King. But also then there's the question of, what does the Night King want? Maybe he becomes the Night King and becomes a soldier of evil. Bran is crucially not in the season 8 trailer that features
So what
Jon,
does that mean?
Sansa, and Arya in the crypts of Winterfell, clearly positioning Jon, who we know now is a Targaryen and a Stark, the son of Rhaegar and Lyanna, positioning Jon as a Stark. And the show is in many ways about identity and choice. And so saying Jon will still choose to align as a Stark, hopefully, or at least in part. Where's Bran? Well, one of the theories is that Bran is there when the cold wind
from
the Night King enters.
Mist coming in, yeah.
Very upsetting. I personally do not want this theory to be true.
Yeah,
So which out of these ones, well, let's go here.
sure.
Who do you want to be on the Iron Throne?
Jon.
Yeah,
So John 2-1. That's what you think too, Jason?
yeah. Yeah, I'd like to see that. I think it just, this whole, there's a lot of like thematic elements, but John's identity, where he comes from, his lineage is in many ways the primary mystery of this story. I mean, it's the thing that when George sat down with Benioff and Weiss the first time, when they were like, we want to make your story a show, he asked them to close the meeting. So who's John's mother?
Right.
And they gave him the correct answer. So that's the key to all of this. So I think it would just be perfect if Jon was on the throne at the end.
Why couldn't it be the Mother of Dragons?
It could be. It certainly could be.
It could be. I think the shocking absence on this board here is the baby, Jon and Dany's baby, because Dany's definitely pregnant.
100%. The womb is quickening.
The womb is quickening.
The womb is quickening, folks. They made love several times on
On
the
a boat, sex boat,
right?
for sure. That's
Right.
a normal thing to do with your aunt.
Right. Goalie pulled.
To be fair, he didn't
because-
know that at the time that she was his aunt. That'll be a tough thing for them to find out.
They'll find out when the baby has 7 arms.
Well,
Well,
you
that's
know, a lot of
that has-
incest babies. A lot of incest babies in
That
A
has
Song of Ice and
happened-
Fire.
That has happened in the history of the Targaryen family. Not 7 arms, but winged children and other
And Joffrey.
not great
Just
stuff.
Joffrey's psychotic personality.
One thing in favor of Bran, though,
Yeah.
I'm just really, I can't get this Bran thing out of my head.
Yeah.
In many ways, fundamentally, what is the story about? Cribbles, bastards, and broken things, right? The Tyrion idea. And so in that sense, Bran has always been one of the emotional through lines of the show. One of our laments about recent trajectories of the show is moving away from Bran.
They sidelined him for.
But so that's one of the things
Full
that I
seasons.
can't wrap my head around.
Yeah.
Bran was literally absent from an entire season of the show. He's going to win at the end? That
Yeah.
just doesn't track.
So, counter,
Mhm.
first episode,
Mm-hmm.
he's in probably one of the 5 most memorable scenes in the show's history and seems like he felt
Yeah.
his death.
And
then if it all came around and he's in charge at the end, that would tie into
totally.
the first
And
episode.
that's kind of my point is like, in terms of the fundamental identity of the show and the story, it makes sense. But in terms of how the show has actually positioned Bran in recent seasons,
Yeah, why not
less
give him a little
Right,
more
he's
PT?
He's been shunted. Yeah, he's been shunted off to the sidelines for significant amounts of time. And even when he has come back, it's kind of like the show has at times, we feel, struggled to kind of tap into the fantasy elements that Bran's character personifies.
So you think the baby should be on the board?
I think the baby should be on the board.
Absolutely, the baby should be on the
Yeah.
board.
Absolutely.
What do we call that baby?
The Song of Ice and Fire.
Yeah.
Ice.
I mean, Jon is the Song of Ice and Fire, really, which is again why Jon
Who
should
can we
be the
cross
Osborne
off?
favorite.
Can we cross off Tyrion?
We can cross off Cersei because Cersei's going to die.
Yeah, Cersei's gonna.
I would
die.
be absolutely stunned if Cersei did not die. Stunned.
Yeah, I know.
Nothing that they could do in season 8 would shock me more than Cersei not dying.
And Cersei living?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For various reasons, the Valancourt prophecy, of course, Maggie the Frog's prophecy. Will Cersei die in childbirth?
No, I don't think so. I would. I mean, it's got to be Jamie, right?
I hope so. I hope
It's gotta
Jamie
be
kills
Jamie.
her.
That's too perfect.
Who else, if you had to do these people are going to die odds? So you think
Davos,
her?
Davos, who I love,
Yeah.
seems like he's fattened up for the execution.
I'm not sure that Cersei or Jamie will make it out. I have a hard time imagining either of them
I
living.
could kind of see a parlay
unfortunately.
where they die in the same scene together.
Well, one of our favorite theories is that Jamie will kill Cersei.
Oh,
This is a prophecy that exists in the book that exists in part in the show, but they kind of took the
They took the
important-
Valonqar part out.
Yeah.
But
So
there's-
it's basically that Cersei will die with the hands of this person around her neck.
And the word in High Valyrian, Valonqar means little brother. And Jamie is technically younger than Cersei.
by like minutes.
She has always thought it referred to Tyrion, which is part of why, not only, but part of why she's loathed him and feared him. But could it be
the
Jamie?
show
What a
ends and
twist.
then he becomes the Sawyer of this decade.
Yeah.
Handsome guy that everybody loves who just could never find another show.
Oh, he'll be great. He's great. Isn't he in a prison movie you like?
I love that movie. Shane, I love that movie. What was it? Shot Caller?
Shot callers.
Yeah.
Shot Caller was good. Couple other ones. Why can't Arya become Iron Throne person?
I mean, she has a path to it. She's got the royal blood. She's got the strong lineage. Obviously,
Very good at the sword play now.
really great with the swords. I just think it's not. It's possible, but it would be highly unlikely. It's not in her nature, for one.
That's
she
the
doesn't
key to
want
me.
it.
That's the key to me. She
At
doesn't
all.
want it.
She would be absolutely spurnful of it.
Do you think that Benioff and Weiss knew how this was going to end when they started the show? Or do you think
No.
this was a lost situation where they figured it out as the show was evolving?
Well, they had that summit meeting
Yeah.
with George, I think before season 6, I want to say, where they basically waylaid George at his Santa Fe compound and were like, tell us everything that you know about how this story goes forward from here on out. And they spent like a couple of days or however long it was just, downloading information from him. So
What if you could have been in the room for that entire summit? How many years would you give up at the end of your life?
oh man.
Like, would you give up like a year, like the last year, just die 1 year early? But you're in for the entire
How
summit.
many total years do I have?
Yeah,
in
and
this
what's my
scenario?
quality? What's the quality like? If it's 1 year where it's kind of like,
Let's say you're in the 90.
90?
Yeah, you
So
get into
I'm-
90.
Okay, so I'm
Because
choosing
at that point, Postmates will just be be full service for you.
89. but I
89. You just
know
died 89
from
instead of 90.
George how the story ends.
You know everything. You're
How's
there for the whole meeting. They even a couple times look over and like, hey, Mal,
what do you think about this?
Yeah. What are
I
your
might
thoughts
choose
here?
that. I think I would
You might
choose
take a
that.
year?
Yeah, because I believe in George and I feel really bad that so many people spend so much of their time judging him for not having finished. I think it just must be a devastating thing for him to have to shoulder. And I root for him and I believe in him. I do not think that he will finish the seventh book.
I don't think he'll finish the seventh.
And hearing it from him would be really special. However, I think we also have to note that the complicating factor here is that George doesn't know how the story's going to end.
That's the thing.
Like,
Here's
let's be real here. If he knew, he would have finished the books.
Right. That's the issue. If George knew how to finish the books, he would have written it. So he
Right.
doesn't. There is whatever the ending. He may have a general direction that he wants to go, and this character are doing this, but he has no real idea how to get there. That much is clear.
Yes. And also just the sheer volume of
There's a lot.
plot
Yeah. it's a
and the
lot.
plot points and the character, the first person perspective narratives that he has to maintain at this point.
And people who have read the books understand that they have widened in scope dramatically, particularly from the third book to the fourth, that it's hard to land this plane, man.
All right, let's make a gambling recommendation once and for all. What is the best bet on the board?
I think it's Jon Snow.
I think it's John also.
Jon Snow 2-1.
Yeah.
That's your recommendation. Do you have one long shot pick for us?
Gendry.
25,
I don't actually see that happening, but it's
16-1.
it's
Right.
the most defensible long shot here because he is King Robert's bastard son. I'm tempted to try to make a case for Sam, though ultimately I think we probably are in agreement that Sam
That's
is
ludicrous. I don't even
Sam
totally
is going
know
to
who Sam
occupy the
is.
George role, which
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
he's going to write
The history.
in the actual
Yeah.
story. He will write
So
a Song
Sam's
of Ice and
George's
Fire.
proxy.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. I don't know. What do you think, Jay? Do you see a long shot that's actually
I mean,
convincing?
Gendry, again, I agree with your take that it's within the realm of possibility, though I do not think that will happen. It's
All right.
it's hard to call Sansa a long shot at
You heard it from
Plus
the Binge
700,
Mode crew.
but I
Jon
can see
Snow
her
2-1. When does can you tip people off on a couple of things we're working on?
Sure.
Binge Mode Thrones comes back for the actual season,
Binge Mode Game of Thrones,
which is April
14th. We'll
not
be
that
back.
far away.
We'll be back
Doing a preview
little
show before that.
Yeah,
Before that.
in some capacity. We'll be with you every week for season 8, and then we've got a lot of fun stuff coming on theringer.com.
Some
a great
really
website.
fun video stuff.
A
Getting
lot of
ready.
fun videos. Jason has been asking about a costume budget, so prepare accordingly.
Costume budget.
We need a costume
Interesting.
budget. It's actually
I don't know if
it's
that's
a
come across my desk yet.
it's a
That sounds
requirement.
interesting.
Absolutely, need the costume budget.
What do you need? What's your number one costume thing?
I would like a Jon Snow Night's Watch. I'd also
He
like
wants a full animatronic dragon.
I'd love a King Jon Snow also. Some wildling, throw some wildling fits in there, and maybe like a
yeah.
maester's, Archmaester's chain, the Valerian link, the whole thing.
He wants a full recreation of John and Egret's sex cave.
Wow.
Sulfur
It- it-
stench
wow.
and all.
Smells better in the cave than anywhere else.
And when do we think Game of Thrones was? Like 1300s? What decade was
My
it?
favorite.
This is the absolute best thing in the
The
world.
1280s?
You tell us, Bill.
I love
I think
it.
like 1300s. I think it's
Yeah.
after the Vikings.
Sure.
Uh-huh.
But I think it's well before like when we created Thanksgiving and things like that. So
Okay.
I'm gonna say like 1300s.
So you're anticipating a Battlestar Galactica Planet of the Apes style ending where we
Right.
realize that this has been our universe all along.
Yeah. 1300s.
Sure.
Seems fair.
Sure.
Could build stuff by then.
Incredible.
I want on the season finale when we're on Twitter and you're already melting down and we have a very special guest and it's going to be Joe Flacco and that'll be it. Your head
Oh
will
my
explode.
God.
And then we'll have to replace
Probably
you.
a very nice man.
I'm sure Joe Flacco's a delight.
He's a nice man.
I'm sure he's a delight. Show me what he can do with a Valerian steel sword and then get back to me.
Jason or Mallory, thank you very much.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Bill.
All right. Thanks to KOC. Thanks to Mallory. Thanks to Jason. Thanks to Gordon Hayward for making me happy last night. Thanks to ZipRecruiter. Don't forget to go to ZipRecruiter.com/BS. Thanks to New York Times Crossword. If you have 2 minutes, play the New York Times mini crossword. A fun way to stay sharp when you're not busy. The satisfaction of solving is endless. Wordplay every day. Taking a break with the mini is time well spent. Download the New York Times Crossword app at nytimes.com/mini. We are back with one more podcast later in the week. Until then.